about sight is that sight requires a constant stream of data, a constant kind of movement. So eyes in their normal state flick back and forth, kind of like when one is sleeping, we have that rapid eye stuff. Well, this happens all the time as an automatic thing. But this also means that if you don't have the flicking, you don't have sight. The retina requires a constant stream of data. So the kind of blindness I have is directly related to the fact that my eyes did not flick. When you're used to something, you don't really think about the difference because you don't really have a difference. I didn't really have anything to compare it to, so my world was texture, temperature, that sort of thing. Color, in viewing it the first time, after having my world be only texture and temperature in reference to it, it was nothing like I expected. It seemed so... I wasn't sure to make of it. I didn't think it was real at first. I doubted whether this was actually what it was or not. It's funny how color has influenced me. I remember certain traumatic events, like seeing my reflection for the first time and realizing, oh my god, I don't have enough color. And of course, dude, by the time I fixed my problem for myself, I was covered in probably every form of makeup that happened to be in the bathroom at the time. Got in trouble, but I consider that an odd moment trying to explore color. It's all about temperature. Like when I think about candy apple red, I think about something incredibly sharp, incredibly hot. That's how I think of it. Of course, cool things speak of cool colors. I mean, that's the way that it was explained to me, because this is the way I could bring it to my experience. It is very difficult to explain the concept of color red if you have no reference. Like, for example, a truck is just a word until you have experience, until you can manually bring it to your experience. My parents felt that, you know, it doesn't have to be seen to be experienced. I got to touch the Rodin bronzes at 15. It was, you know, a production event to get permission to do that, but I put the glove on and I touched them. Seeing for the first time was very painful. I remember it exactly. A lot of my time was spent in the doctor's office in a very not so well lit room with, you know, a guy who in his smeary nature looked pretty much the same, with a small spoon-like object saying, please follow the object around the room. And as a kid, I hated it because it was like, God, this shouldn't be so hard. I should be able to use it now. I mean, not knowing what things were, not understanding when someone would say, haven't you ever seen a rainbow before? And I'm like, no. I still get times where I feel overloaded, where things get like a bad internet video that you don't have bandwidth and it sort of gets choppy. Well, that's what happens to my sight if I try to look at too many things at once. They tell me that that'll never go away. The current technology we have doesn't you know, fix that sort of thing. But it was very milky, very unformed. It's like if somebody like coated your eyes with milk and then forced you to look through it until it cleared. No, I do not have any formal education, or save one drawing one class at CNM here, which is one of the junior colleges. I took that class just so that I could get my hands on a medium I had never used before. I had never used charcoal before. I had never used pastel before. I still think pastel is creepy and I won't use it. It feels like I'm holding a stick of colored fudge. Ugh. My adventure to painting, it actually started as kind of a challenge. Before, I had used a lot of pen media, magic markers, pencils, pens, that sort of thing. Very portable, not very wet, not paint. And a colleague of mine had me read her book and wanted to basically get my feedback on it. And I drew something for her in magic marker, and we're all standing in the hallway outside of her classroom, and she says to me, "Man, this really needs to be wet." And if I had to name the penultimate moment when I decided to figure out how to paint, it was that. And so that weekend, I burnt a couple $100 and I just did it. And I started it and I really liked it. And then eventually my colleagues were like, "Dude, you're really good." And I was like, "Sure, okay." And they were, "You will display." And they dropped a couple of bills on me, and that was pretty much it. I got with some people. I started doing, you know, one man shows, one person shows where I did my own promoting and that sort of thing. I started going to like craft fairs and stuff, and people started really liking it, and so I ended up doing the gallery gig I do now, where I ended up with the wooden cows.